Hi, this is Mike Schwartz from Gluu, and in this short demo, I'm going to show how to set up the Gluu server for two-factor authentication. And I'm going to use Duo Security's authentication mechanism, which is a good example of a two-step authentication. So just a quick diagram. The Gluu server is very flexible and supports a number of different two-factor authentication services. Basically, as long as the two-factor mechanism has an API that we can call, or an SDK in Java or Python, or some other way to call it on the system, we can support it using what's called a custom authentication script. Let me switch my browser to the Gluu server itself is protected with OpenID Connect, and so it's just sort of a good example. Let me log in, and in the first step for Duo Security, I'm presented with my username and password credentials, which is authenticated versus LDAP. In the second step, um, because I have a mobile phone associated with my account, I can request an out-of-band notification. So I can request a phone call, SMS text, or because I have a mobile app installed, I can request a push. So let me do that. And my phone dings, and I get a little message that looks like this, where it says, this user is trying to log into this server from this IP address and geolocation. I will approve it on my phone. And then this is the OpenID Connect scope authorization. I'll allow it. And now I'm in the Gluu server. So let me show how you configure authentication in the Gluu server. We can navigate to Manage Authentication. And here we can, if we simply have an LDAP server, we can just provide the LDAP host name and port and bind DN and other information. You can specify a default type of authentication. Note, you can define multiple types of concurrent authentication. If you have something fancier than LDAP, you can define what we call a custom authentication script. And these are written in Jython. Let me show the one for Duo. So basically, you just paste your code in here. The reason we used Jython here, our server's in Java, but we decided that it would be more agile to let the administrator use an interpreted language like Jython in case they wanted to add a print statement. They wouldn't have to compile and deploy. And if you have a cluster, it can be hard to compile, deploy new files to in the cluster. So with the interpreted approach, because the script is in the configuration, it can be replicated. Note that Gluu server supports both interactive and services authentication. Interactive is where there's a redirect to a web page, think SAML, and services is where the client, either the mobile or web application, is actually collecting the username and password or some other credential and sending it. We also allow some custom script to be installed for logout. So if you want to clean up sessions, clean up, perhaps log out of a legacy SSO like SiteMinder or CAS, you can do that here. So in the script, you can define your constants in the properties files. This is useful so that if you write the script, the developer won't have to change any of the code. Let me show this code in a different editor. So note in Jython you can use either Java classes or Python classes. Duo provides us with a very nice Python API that wraps the web services REST calls. In Python, this is how you define the interface. So the class basically inherits this other class. So it requires, the interface requires that you implement a couple of methods. Of course, the most important method is authenticate. Authenticate returns a Boolean, true or false, if the person successfully authenticated. Now, note that Duo is a two-step authentication. You could have a two-factor, one-step authentication. Think of RSA tokens. You put in your PIN number and then you put in the token ID into the password field, but it really happens in one step. Duo, in the first step, you enter your username password. In the second step, there's an out-of-bound notification sent, and we have to wait for that. So in step one, we use the code to validate the password. We have some Java code for this. In this case, it's a local password, but it could be your external Active Directory server or any server. We are doing something a little bit fancy here because for this customer, they didn't want to Duo authenticate everybody, so they have a special group called the Duo group. And basically, so if the person's in here, they get two-factor authenticated, two-step, I should say. And if they're not, they can use a one-step authentication. So the weird thing about this script is that in some cases it's a one-step authentication, and in some cases it's a two-step. Um, in step two, it's pretty easy. We call the Duo API. It's just one line. And that validates that the person has entered, that we're expecting has entered their out-of-band authentication, and we're good to go. So we can return true. Well, that gives you an idea of the functionality of the Glue server. Note that you can add whatever business logic you want in here. You could add, perhaps, so you call an API. We recently talked with a vendor who collect some data and can do a Bayesian analysis and tell you within a 94% likelihood if the authentication is fraudulent. Or you could decide to not allow authentications from outside your country. So there's a lot of opportunity for APIs to be called or other adaptive rules to be implemented for authentication to really allow your organization to get the exact workflow that you need for authentication. So that wraps up the demo. And if you'd like to find out more, please visit our website, gluu.org. Thanks.